One last topic, Iran. It it seems that Donald Trump has Iran in its crosshairs. Now, Benjamin Netanyahu, as you pointed out, desperate men do desperate things. He has been screaming for the last 20, 30 years that Iran is trying to build a nuclear bomb and that they are 5 minutes away from doing so. And 20 years later, it hasn't necessarily taken place, unless not in the open. How serious do you think Trump is about this idea of, well, anything that the Houthis do is effectively Iran doing it. And so we are going to hold Iran responsible for anything that the Houthis do. And so we have a license to now go after Iran. Okay, that's outrageous. Nobody voted for that. And man of peace, Donald Trump. Okay, benefit of the doubt. Threats. Trump is that way. And so those could just be threats. Do you think there's any validity to those threats?
Well, first thing, Trump didn't invent this concept. The reality is that that Ansarallah is part of the axis of resistance, and there is strategic coordination taking place between Ansarallah and Iran. To what degree and all that, I can't speak with any specificity. Is Ansarallah capable of taking sovereign actions? Of course they are. So you can't automatically link what Ansarallah is doing in Iran, but Trump's not off base in saying that Iran could do more to ratchet this thing down, and it's not in Iran's interest. I mean, Iran, they're in a confrontational mode between the United States and Iran right now. Right. Netanyahu may have been saying that Iran is 5 minutes away from a nuclear weapon, and it has been right up until recently. Now Iran is saying they're literally days away from having a nuclear weapon. This is what I want to remind people. One, Iran's not allowed to have a nuclear weapon by treaty, which they signed, the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. So Iran's not allowed to have one. I know people, well, I don't give a damn what you think. Legally, Iran's not allowed to have a nuclear weapon. End of story. There is no debate. If Iran wants a nuclear weapon, then do what North Korea did. Withdraw from the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty and then build your nuclear weapon. But Iran can't have its cake and eat it too. And yet, what Iran has done, because of they live in a difficult world and there's been threats and posturing, etc., they've had a succession of senior officials hint that, one, Iran has the technical capacity to build a nuclear weapon today if they chose to do so. And two, all they need to do is change the political decision. Right now, the supreme leader has said, no, it's haram, it's forbidden, there's a fatwa, etc. And the Iranians have all said, yes, that's valid. But when you have Jalili, a man who could have been president of Iran, lost the election in June, is now a senior advisor to the supreme leader. He sits on the Expediency Discernment Council. When Jalili says that if situations arise that pose an existential threat to Iran, then Iran is allowed to reconsider fatwas and change them to, in a manner which facilitates the survival of the Islamic Republic. In short, and if he's saying that means it has been discussed in the inner circles of the supreme leader. So the fatwa isn't carved in stone. The fatwa is written on paper, and that paper can be burned if Iran determines that it's in its interest of national survival. And Israel having nuclear weapons and threatening Iran appears to be one of those things. So now I'm Donald Trump. I roll in, and I got Netanyahu screaming about Iranian nuclear weapons. I turn to my CIA, and they go, yeah, boss, it's not good. They're very close. If they make a political decision, they can have this weapon very soon. And Trump's like, well, we can't let that happen. What do we do? And a return to the JCPOA isn't going to work. Let me just remind everybody, the JCPOA was never going to work, because at the end of the day, the JCPOA's restrictions were almost all lifted, and Iran got to enrich as much as they wanted to enrich with modern centrifuges, etc. And their breakout window was going to always shrink down to a very short period of time. And so now when you have that reality, and you have now the Iranians themselves saying, yeah, we could change that fatwa. See, the fatwa is not carved in stone. You can't go to sleep at night and say, well, Iran has a fatwa, because Iran will say, nope, Israel's a dangerous country, and we have to change things. So now what do? You got to get rid of Iran's nuclear program. There's no debate about this. And I know the Iranians are like, that's our sorry. Guys, you're about to be nuked. There, I said it. You see, when Donald Trump was president last time, he was confronted with this problem. How do you deal with Iran's nuclear program? And the idea was to conventionally take it out. The problem is some of these targets are deeply buried. We don't have conventional weapons that can do this. So we developed, under Donald Trump's instructions, new classes of nuclear weapons. They're low-yield nuclear weapons, but designed to penetrate underground bunkers. A new design of the B-61 gravity bomb and the W-76-2 low-yield warhead delivered by the Trident missile off of a submarine. These weapons will take out Iran's nuclear infrastructure and buried command and control facilities. So when the Iranian government flees to Mashhad and goes down into the bunkers that North Korea built for them in the 1990s, which we've been tracking, if you remember when the Beast of Kandahar, that big drone, B-2 looking drone, got kidnapped by the Iranians over Western Iran and stolen, they landed it. It was taking pictures of Mashhad. We've been monitoring all that. We know where they are. We know everything. And so what's going to happen, Iran, is you've been told you have, 2 weeks, 2 months? I don't know what there's a period of time that Trump has put out there to either negotiate or die. And if you choose death, then Donald Trump is going to nuke you. He is going to take out your nuclear facilities, your command and control. It's a regime change operation. It's designed to eliminate you from the face of the earth. The theocracy will no longer exist because none of you will be alive. Your economy will be destroyed. It's going to be a blitz designed to prevent you from doing anything else. So all those facilities that you have out there, your missile facilities, the new naval facility underground, they're all going to be hit with low-yield nuclear weapons. We're going to pop, 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 pop. They're all underground detonations, so there's not going to be big radioactive clouds, and you cease to exist. Do you want that game? Now, you're going to say, well, America has no right. I don't care about that. You're right.
That's not what I was going to say. I was going to say I am highly skeptical. Look, military guys often say we can do all of this stuff, and very rarely is it true, and there will be a response that will destroy the world's economy. That's what I think is what would happen.
But I think we've been preparing for that response, and we know what Iran has. For instance, if you have ballistic missiles, and your ballistic missiles are stored in an underground facility, and you have to bring them out to deploy them, what happens when I hit that underground facility? Understand, Jamal, this will happen in one night. This isn't something that's going to extend out for days. This is a strike that will happen in one night.
But see, I think Iran has also been planning for this for decades. Meaning in Iran's mind.
No one's planned for this. No one's planned for this. You can't plan for this. You can't plan for what's going to happen.
Now, I guess the first question is Trump serious? Meaning, is this legitimately on the table that Trump may go this route?
100%. And you know who believes him? The Iranians. Want to know why? Because you remember how they got the letter and they went, "Oh, we hate you. You wrote this letter, a nasty letter, and we won't negotiate with you. We will hate you. You do what you need to do. You want to have an economic war, you want to do this, have this, that, and the other thing." And then Trump went, "I'm going to nuke you." And they went, "We're willing to talk." They're willing to talk now. And they're talking. There are things happening. Trump, the madman, did it again, I believe. See, I don't think there's going to be a nuclear war because I think the Iranians have woken up and went, we don't need this stuff, because they had an internal discussion. I'm just telling you right now, the best they're going to be able to do is fire 1,000 missiles against Israel, but then they disappear because there won't be a reload because the nation disappears. And the supreme leader disappears. The Revolutionary Guard command disappears. Everything disappears, and they're left with nothing. And I think a wise leader says, we're not in the business of this nation that we've been building so assiduously since the revolution, this Islamic revolution that we believe in for the betterment of our people. We're not in the business of throwing that all away for what? Now, here, this is where it comes down to their nuclear program. They say it's not a nuclear weapons program. They say it's for peaceful energy. Now, that argument flew when the United States had sanctions. We were blocking the building of the Bushehr reactor. Remember, Russia had to come in and finish the construction, but now the fuel, they needed guarantees of fuel supply, so they have their indigenous thing. But the amount of uranium that they can produce far exceeds the needs of the Bushehr reactor. So Iran said, well, we're going to build other nuclear reactors, and they were talking about it. They can't do it. So Russia came in as part of the strategic framework and said, we'll build those reactors for you. But a key aspect to our construction of those reactors is that we provide the fuel.
Right.
So there's no longer a need for Iran's indigenous uranium enrichment program. There is no legitimate, peaceful need for it. So its continued existence must be and will be seen as a threat by the rest of the world. And the Iranians have to understand this. Now, they have pride, and they're saying this is our national pride and all that stuff. You know, I'm sorry, but the situation is today, you got to give it up.
Wait, to be clear, it's not the rest of the world, it's Israel. It's just
no,
Israel.
No, let's be clear. Russia doesn't want an Iranian nuclear weapon. China doesn't want an Iranian nuclear weapon. France doesn't want it. Europe doesn't want it. It's the whole world that doesn't want it. It's not just Israel. Nobody wants Iran to cross into that nuclear threshold. Israel is, of course, pressuring the United States, but the Russians, you don't see the Russians running up and defending the Iranians on this one. You don't see China going, nope, stop it. Iran's allowed to have. Everybody's saying, nah, Iran, you're wrong on this. You got to get rid of it. And that's why I think the Iranians have woken up and said, all right, we need to begin negotiations to get rid of this nuclear stuff so that this threat disappears. And here's the thing for Donald Trump. The driver of conflict in the Middle East, the biggest driver, is Israel, Iran. If you solve the Iranian issue, you actually help create stability for the rest of the Middle East, so it becomes more approachable in terms of problem solving for peaceful outcomes. But the thing that hangs over, it was the same thing when I was going to Israel and talking about Iraq. Every time I was there talking about, okay, we've done a great thing to get rid of Iraq's WMD and all that stuff, all the Israelis said, but the Iranians, but the Iranians, but the Iranians.
But the Israelis. But the Israelis. Israel has a nuclear weapon. Israel has been on a killing spree for the last year and a half. And you can make an argument for the last 70 years. How on earth can an argument be made that Israel can have a nuclear weapon that goes unacknowledged, but that everybody knows that they have? But, Iran is the issue.
Did Israel sign the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty? Did Israel sign the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty?
No. By the same token,
there's the argument. There's the argument.
What do you mean that's the argument, Scott? I guess my point is, look, I got to be honest. I don't think the treaty.
I'm not defending Israel. I'm just saying that Iran signed a treaty.
Okay.
And Iran signed the treaty knowing that Israel had nuclear weapons.
I know, but if Iran takes its name off the treaty, they will be attacked immediately because it would be seen as Iran is trying to make a play for nuclear weapons.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not fair. I'm not talking about being fair. I'm talking about reality right now.
It's reality, yeah.
And when you're looking for peace, you've got to deal with reality, not fiction, not fantasy. If you and I agree we want peace in the Middle East, then I think right now the big driver here isn't Gaza. I know our hearts and souls. You know me on Gaza, how I believe, but to be honest, Gaza is a blip on the radar compared to what would happen if there was a nuclear conflict involving the United States taking out Iran. You know, the most you could kill in Gaza, let's say we committed genocide against all the Gazans, about 2 million
people. Yeah. Well, 2 million in Gaza, right.
If we have a nuclear war with Iran, there's the potential of killing tens of millions.
Oh.
So the scope and scale of this. So this is why I put my major effort right now analytically on how to prevent this conflict and why it's important to prevent this conflict. And I don't allow myself, and again, I don't mean to be demeaning to anybody, but I don't allow myself to get distracted by Gaza. Gaza's a sideshow. I warned about this early on. When Hamas did their action, I said it's imperative that, and I said, this is why Hezbollah isn't escalating big. This is why Iran's not coming in, because the only way to help the Palestinian people is to keep the focus on Gaza and the Palestinian issue. But it's such a minor issue. It's a huge moral issue. But geopolitically, it's such a minor non-issue when you compare, for instance, an Israeli-Hezbollah war. If Israel went into a full-scale war with Hezbollah, which they did, and what happened? The moment Israel started bombing Hezbollah, nobody talked about Gaza anymore.
Right.
We weren't talking about Gaza anymore. And if Israel gets, now you have True Promise and all this stuff, Israel, Iran, nobody's talking about Gaza. This is where we're at right now. If you want to focus on Gaza, you've got to solve these other problems to get back to Gaza. But Israel, this was one of the strategies of Netanyahu, is to expand the conflict so that the scope and scale is greater than Gaza, which means that people aren't focused on that anymore. When you're telling people that there could be a war with Iran that causes the price of oil to shoot up to $200 a barrel, there's not going to be too many people going, yeah, but Gaza.
But would you agree with me, though, that the root is Gaza? I mean, the entire point of True Promise, in some respects, or the axis of resistance in and of itself, has a lot to do with Israel's occupation and expansion. Meaning, it's like, until you solve that part, the other stuff just remains. Even if you get rid of Iran's nuclear program, you've given Israel the dispensation of force, meaning you've effectively allowed Israel to do whatever it wants in the region as a superpower in the region with nukes unopposed. Like, it seems that the issue is Gaza, even if this issue spread. Yemen, the Houthis are literally attacking ships in the Red Sea because of Gaza. Iran.
Right. But I mean, Gaza is a problem, but that's like saying I have an ingrown toenail, and it hurts. I can't walk because of it. It's bad. It's infected. I got to deal with that, but I've got a brain tumor.
See, no, I don't think that analogy is right. I think it's almost like you have tooth decay, and you find out that the tooth decay is causing heart disease. I'm saying the tooth decay was the issue. I can tell you now, doctors are looking at people's teeth to make sure that those people don't end up with something later on. I think it's that. Meaning, I agree with you, right? Oh, the war with Iran and Israel will be dramatic, and it will be over the top. Iran is, 88 million people, some insane number of people. So, agreed. You have my agreement. But part of the reason for that issue existing and inflaming of that issue is Gaza. That Israel has gone on a killing spree over the last year and a half, 2 years, that has gotten Iran into it, Hezbollah into it, Yemen into it, meaning the root of it has to do with that. So you have my agreement.
But Jamal, who cares about Gaza? I mean, I'm sorry. I don't mean to be blunt here. Egypt doesn't care about Gaza. Jordan doesn't care about Gaza. Syria, doesn't anymore.
They don't exist. Yeah.
Saudi Arabia doesn't care about Gaza. Kuwait doesn't care about United Arab Emirates. So Gaza, to be fair here, is an artificial construct of global morality imposed on a situation. Left to its own devices, though, the region would solve Gaza by making it disappear. Mm-hmm. So it's not just an Israeli problem. Because when you have the Saudis, the home of Wahhabism, coming out and having a major Saudi blogger put out something where he says the Palestinians are an artificial construct. Who are the Palestinians? They're not even Arabs. They're an amalgam of Circassians and Armenians and this and that who have come together under Ottoman rule. It's a fake entity, and it shouldn't be given the right of statehood. Now, I'm not saying that's the case. I'm saying when you have the Saudis articulating this publicly, knowing that in Saudi Arabia, if you articulate something publicly that's not supported by MBS, you're shut down. But the fact is, it's being allowed to go, which means that's the official stance of the Saudi government.
It's a point of view, yeah.
And so, this is what frustrates me, because I've bought into the morality of the argument in favor of the Palestinian people and the Palestinian statehood. It's a moral, it's a just argument. And then I watch their fellow Arabs stab them in the back, betray them at the drop of a hat. Even people who previously called themselves pro-Palestinian, my response is, who are you pro for? Do you consider Hamas to be Palestine? There's half the debate right there. because a lot of people say they're pro-Palestinian, say I'm not pro-Hamas. Well, who the hell's fighting for Palestine if not Hamas? It's not Abu Mazen. It's not the Palestinian Authority. If you're pro-Palestinian Authority, you're pro-Israel, because the Palestinian Authority is subordinated to Israel. So what the hell is Palestine? I'm not going to wear a T-shirt with a slice of watermelon on it until the Palestinians themselves decide who the hell they are, because I'm tired of speaking to a schizophrenic audience. When I say I support Palestine, I find out that 8 out of the 10 Palestinians don't support what I'm saying, because they have a different vision of what it is. So that's half the problem, is we're supporting a ghost. We're supporting something that doesn't exist. And frankly speaking, if we stop supporting it, it would die, because it doesn't have a legitimacy within the region that it aspires to be part of. If you can't get the Egyptians to articulate in favor of an independent Palestine and put their money where it's ironic. Yemen has stood up. They're doing the right thing. God bless Nasrallah. But when we say Yemen, it's not all of Yemen, because there's a big chunk of Yemen that's on the side of the Saudis, United Arab Emirates, that are saying, hell no, we don't care about Palestine. None of the non-Shia, because even you go to Lebanon, the only Arabs in Lebanon who care about Palestine, frankly speaking, are the Shia of Hezbollah, because they are linked to the axis of resistance. So there's an Iranian heart here that's driving this all. Again, which tells the Israelis the best way to shut down, because from the Israeli perspective, they're like, it's like what would happen if we went to the hospital and you saw, I got hit by a car and I'm in the hospital, I'm on, breathing in tubes and all that, but my brainwave is dead. You like, pull the plug, man. He's done. From the Israeli perspective, like, there's no brain activity here. This thing called Palestine, there's no brain activity. Why do you keep it on life support? The life support is Iran. Pull the plug on Iran, this thing dies, because nobody wants to save it. There's no organ donors out there saying, give them my heart, give them my lungs, give them my liver, whatever it takes to keep Palestine alive, take it from me. No, we have a bunch of liberal well-wishers here in the United States who are correctly saying this is a moral affront, this is but nobody else wants to keep it alive. I'm tired of going to Arab communities in America and having them unable to tell me what the hell Palestine is. What do they want? And even those communities that are supportive of Palestine, they're basically in support of it because it irritates Israel so much. They use Palestine as a tool against Israel. Their real motivation is to bring Israel down, not to bring Palestine up. This is such a complicated situation right now. I'm fed up with it because, like I said, I poured my heart and soul into saying I believe in the Palestine. But what Palestine do I believe in? Because if my vision for Palestine, which I thought was a unified state, doesn't comport with 8 out of the 10 of the people who claim to be Palestinians, then who the hell am I to intervene? And at the end of the day, if the Palestinians can't agree, maybe it's time to pull the plug. Maybe Palestine doesn't deserve to exist. Because if the only way you keep Palestine alive is by having outsiders go to war, then Palestine is the problem. We've identified the problem. Palestine is the problem. The concept of creating a Palestinian state is the problem. I need the Arabs to start rallying around a Palestinian state. As I went to Iraq in 2002, and I remember I was supposed to speak to the Iraqi parliament, and they're very concerned about what I would say about Israel and all this stuff. And so I had to have a series of negotiations with people because I told them they don't get a right to preview my presentation. I said that's not how this works. But I said, you can't be more Palestinian than the Palestinians. You can't sit here and claim to be a supporter of Palestine and yet forbid things that the Palestinians have agreed to. And if Palestine has agreed to negotiate with Israel, then Iraq can't get in the way of that. Iraq has to say that they will accept what Palestine does. And so that was the way I got around it, where I didn't mention Israel exactly. What I did say in my speech is you can't be more Palestinian than the Palestinians.
Right.
And I think that's what we all need to do right now. We can't be more Palestinian than the Palestinians. If the Palestinians can't figure out who the hell the Palestinians are, then who are we to be out there advocating for them? Because who are we advocating for? I mean, in the United States now, if you say I support Hamas, because to be honest, the only way you can advocate for a Palestinian state today is to advocate for the organization that is fighting for a Palestinian state. It ain't Fatah. It ain't the Palestinian Authority. It's not it's Hamas. So if you're saying I support a Palestinian state, you are indirectly saying I support Hamas. And now you're saying I support a terrorist organization. And with the new Trump administration, you're putting your ass on the line. If you're a foreigner, they're deporting you for saying this. If you're an American, the FBI may come kick down your house. Hello, guys. But my point is, if I'm going to do this, if I'm going to take that risk, my God, the people I'm risking for have to be worthy of the risk. Now, I'm willing to do it for Hind Rajab, that 6-year-old girl that was murdered by the Israelis. I'm willing to do it for the people of Gaza because they fought, they stood up, they're willing to sacrifice. But I'm not willing to do a damn thing anymore for the people of the rest of the Palestinians. And I'm certainly not going to do it for the Palestinian diaspora that cheered the fall of Bashar al-Assad and is silent as Alawites and Christians are slaughtered.
Oh,
I am not going to support that.
Because a lot of people, look, I got to be honest, I had to be educated on that. Like Al Jazeera, certain organizations, perfectly fine with Assad going, perfectly fine with it, and with all of the chaos that came after it, but are bleeding hearts for Palestine.
Yeah,
it confused the hell out of me at first until I had various people to explain, dude, these are different factions. They're not the same.
A human life is a human life.
That's the way I look at it too.
And if I'm going to get all teary-eyed about Hind Rajab, then I should get teary-eyed about the Alawite child that was murdered by Al-Qaeda. And evil is evil. Evil is evil. And Al-Qaeda will always be evil, no matter how much you dress it up, cut the beard, put the tie on. They're head choppers to the core. It's ISIS, it's Al-Qaeda. They've taken control of Syria, and they're murdering people in the name of Islam, a perverted version of Islam. And there are people in the United States that are okay with that, who call themselves, righteous Islamic people. And I reject that. I reject murder in the name of religion. I reject it when Christians do it, and I reject it when Muslims do it. And right now you have people out there cutting heads, slitting throats, killing people, making people crawl on their hands and knees and bark like a dog before you shoot them because they have a different vision of religion than you do. I'm sorry, and I'll say this right now. If Islam is so intolerant of people who don't believe in, then the problem isn't the people that don't believe. The problem is Islam. Yeah. Islam is a religion in the world, a world that has to get along peacefully. The Christians had to learn this. We don't get to go around and rule by the sword anymore. We've decided that the day of the missionary with the sword, convert or die, is over. That's incompatible with Christian faith. And there are many Muslims out there who don't believe in what's happening here. But if you're calling yourself a Muslim and you live in the United States and you are okay with Muslims killing Alawites because the Alawites aren't really Muslim, then that's a brand of Islam I don't want to be associated with, and I don't want it in my country. So when Tulsi Gabbard says, Islamic extremism is the biggest threat, the first thing is like, oh, come on, Tulsi, this again? But then I'm like, well, wait a minute. Islamic extremism, not Islam. Islamic extremism. And Islamic extremism, if it's defined by people who believe that if you don't comport with their vision of Islam, that they can refer to an obscure part of the Quran that says, I get to kill you. The problem isn't me. The problem is them. And this comes down to the same thing with Palestine. There has to be a unified vision of, or at least a majority vision of what Palestine is before we talk about supporting the creation of Palestine. And there also has to be a unity in why we're doing this. What I'm finding out is most people are doing this not because they support Palestine, but because this is an effective tool to oppose Israel.
But Israel thinks of that too. I mean,
I'm not defending Israel at all. Don't get me wrong.
No. I'm not saying you're defending it. I'm not saying that. I'm trying to point out that, look, I agree with you. There's not a unified vision. You have Fatah, you have Hamas. I would argue that part of that is policy to keep that division in play in general, right? I mean, that was the whole reason that Israel was backing Hamas at one point because, hey, we get to split these two sects. We get to create a division.
I think and unfortunately I've got to go, but I'll just leave you this.
Yeah.
What you said is very important. And I think it's time we all look in the mirror and ask ourselves, are we being played? Because there are people take advantage of your good soul. I'd like to believe I have a good soul, our kind spirit, and our desire to want to do the right thing. And there's people that take advantage of that. And then instead of us doing what we firmly believe in, we're being indirectly controlled to be tools. What's the term they always use? A useful idiot. I believe in this and I believe in that, but you're really being, they're controlling you. And this whole concept of the Arab-Israeli conflict and all this stuff, sometimes I sit back and I say, are we just being played? Are we being played for a grander, strategy that uses conflict to achieve something else? All I know is I've lost faith in the Palestinian cause. It doesn't mean that I don't believe in the righteousness of a Palestinian state. I just don't trust the Palestinians anymore, as collectively. I don't know who to trust. I don't know who to believe. I don't know what they stand for. I don't know what they want. They don't know what they want. They can't agree amongst each other what they want. And so, that also makes it easier for me to say, let's try and solve Iran. Because I dealt with the Iranians.
That's more of a clarified issue for you.
Pardon?
Yeah. That's more clear for you. That's more clarified.
For my poor little Marine Corps brain, which thrives on simplicity, I can deal with the Iranians. That doesn't mean that they're complicated. They don't have factions. They have problems. Everybody has problems. Look at America. We are so screwed up. It's not even funny. But the Iranians, I think I understand them. I understand their objectives, especially the believers in the Islamic Republic. It's very clear to me what they want, and I'm able to wrap that up and navigate that policy path. With Palestine, I thought I could. I thought I had it. I don't. It is a fractured. It is just broken, and I don't know if Humpty Dumpty can be put back together again. I don't know. I'm not going to be the guy to do it. I'm not going to be the person wasting the time to put the pieces together. If Palestinians can do it themselves and come together with something that makes sense, I'll jump on board. But I'm not going to sit here and be beating my head against the wall supporting a vision that's linked to Hamas when the rest of the Palestinians are going to abandon them in a heartbeat and abandon me in the process, and say, no, this is what we're doing. This is what we believe in. And the only ones fighting for a Palestinian state today is Hamas. No one else is fighting for it. No one.
Scott Ritter, former UN's weapons inspector, weapons of mass destruction, whistleblower. Scott, I deeply appreciate this conversation. I really do.
Okay, thanks.
You have a good one, man. Be safe.
You too.
All right. We are going to end this. I appreciate all of you for joining me. I know many of you disagreed with what Scott said. I disagree with what Scott said too. I think, look, I will tell you from my take before I close. It is, of all the issues that we cover, this is the most maddening to me. I feel like we're banging our head on the wall and nothing gets accomplished. And it's like 70 years later and nothing gets accomplished. And Israel goes on these killing sprees every so often, mowing the lawn, as they call it. Nothing gets accomplished. October 7th happens. Shock, awe. Israel has their security fundamentally challenged by a group that they thought they had in a prison, open air ghetto, killing en masse for a year and a half. The world watches. Nothing happens. It is maddening issue. If you're looking at Ukraine and Russia, okay, there's movement, there's negotiations, there's something that's happening. You know that Russia is ultimately going to win in that context. Okay, so something is moving in that issue. Even with Iran stuff, with Donald Trump threatening to hit Iran, there's negotiations in the air of that threat that's lingering. Okay, again, that's an issue. Something's moving. 70 years later. And this idea of the state, the US, Israel does everything in their power to prevent it from coming to about, despite the fact that they're giving it lip service. It is a maddening issue. And then, as Scott pointed out, which I think grates, and it grates on me too, actually. This idea that Hamas, who is ostensibly a Muslim organization, is okay with Assad being taken down, celebrates Assad being taken down. And for people like me, what that means is that minority communities are going to be slaughtered. And lo and behold, we have minority communities being slaughtered with Alawites, Shias, Christians, non-believers of whatever the hell ISIS believes in, dragged out of their house and killed. I watched an 8-year-old get beat by grown men because she was of a different religious type. And so you get journals like Al Jazeera thinking this is okay and calling this some kind of uprising, despite the fact you have Uyghurs, you have people, Uzbeks, people who are not Syrians coming into Syria, taking power in Syria. Jelani is ISIS through and through. He's a head chopper, a literal head chopper. I can show you videos where he's out there chopping heads. And so it's disconcerting. It's weird. Initially, I didn't understand it until it was like, hey, different sects. Just like in America, you have different political factions. Despite the fact that you would think that all of these people would be on the similar side. Not so much. But I disagree with him. I think, because look, at the end of the day, and I'll end this because I have to go. You have 2 million people who are there. That's reality. You got to deal with that. You have what, 2, 3, 4 million people in West Bank. They're there. You have to deal with that. It's not an issue where you can say, well, I'm done with the issue, because they are there. They're not going anywhere. You have to deal with the fact that they're there. And so this idea of, okay, well, I'm just going to blow this off. I don't want to deal with this issue anymore. I'm sick of this issue. They don't know what they stand for, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, dude, you've had an open air ghetto that has been there for decades. You've had an apartheid state, literally an apartheid state that has only gotten worse, that has been there for decades. You have to deal with that. That's meaning you can cognitively say, I'm taking this off the table as an issue. I'm throwing it away. They are human beings that are living in horrendous conditions that have only gotten magnificently worse. They're there. You, as an individual, can take it off as an issue, but it's there. It's not going anywhere. All right, I'm going to end this. I'm going to say like, I'm going to say share, I'm going to say subscribe.